Welcome back, friends, to MAXQBBQ My Cybertruck Journey. In today's video, we share the lessons learned on my first 3,500-mile road trip across the USA in an electric vehicle. When I started my road trip, I had a bit over 2,800 miles on my 4-month-old Cybertruck. So planning a cross-country trip that would more than double the amount of miles on my Cybertruck was a little bit stressful and intimidating at first. For the majority of the trip, I would be dependent upon Tesla's Superchargers and Supercharger Network. And good route planning is essential to making sure you don't run out of battery or charge or find yourself too far away to make it to the next charging stop. While I had watched a few other EV road trips videos, none of them fully prepared me for the lessons that I was about to learn. If you're planning a Cybertruck or EV road trip, stick around and watch this video because you're going to get a lot of insight on the lessons that I learned from my 3,500-mile cross-country road trip. At the end of this video, I've included a few accessories that made my road trip safer and more enjoyable. This winter holiday trip would take the MAXQ Cybertruck from Baltimore, Maryland to St. Louis, Missouri, down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and back to Baltimore, Maryland. The trip would occur over a 2-week winter holiday break, with driving being broken up into 10 to 15-hour daily segments. Before taking my first ambitious road trip, I started planning my travel around family and holiday events. All I needed now was to plan the trip that would keep me on schedule. The first lesson learned was build your confidence for the trip using an online planning application. A coworker recommended a better route planner for the task. When planning a long road trip across the country, it's a good idea to use route planning software and applications to prepare for the trip. When preparing for my recent trip across the Midwest, then South, and back to the Northeast, I plotted the trip using a better route planner first. Using this tool, I was able to prepare my trip and calculate how much distance I could comfortably achieve in a single day of driving. A better route planner allows you to change the characteristics of the route plan. You can start by setting up your vehicle profile, in my case, putting in the Tesla Cybertruck and the average range per kilowatt, and then you can choose which charging networks to use, like the Tesla Supercharger Network or some of the others that are out there that are available to us. Once you've chosen your charging network, you can set the characteristics for the planner. For example, you can have it configured for the fewest but longer stops, or you might want to go for the quickest arrival, or in other cases, you might want short but many stops. You can use a pattern that best fits your desired travel style. At my age and physical condition, I need to make more stops, so choosing shorter trips seems to work well for me. I prefer to stop every 2 hours or less, and I like to plan segments of my trip of about 100 to 150 highway miles. Another advantage of preparing is that you can better plan your overnight stops along the way. For me, 10 hours of less driving per day is best. Given that we are having longer charging stops by driving an EV, this still works out to being on the road more than 10 hours when adding in for those stops and other rest stops. One of the nice features about a better route planner is that you're able to save your plans. So in my case, I broke the trip up into several segments and actually saved plans based upon the segments. But you could also set it up to do the whole trip. And so in this case, I could go in and load all planned settings, and it will calculate and run the planning. And it comes back with a complete overview of your whole trip. including where your supercharger stops should occur. One of the nice features of a better route planner is it's very Google Maps-like in its planning. It'll oftentimes give you some alternate routes. For me, I like to cut up through Pennsylvania along the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I find that makes it a little bit shorter than cutting down through West Virginia. And it's a simple process of reaching up here, except I have to use the mouse, and selecting that route. And in this case, it selects the routes and it gives me the charging. With an 80% starting charge in Baltimore, I would be able to arrive at Breezewood, Pennsylvania, just before I get on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and be able to charge there for 13 minutes. So this really is very nice when you're planning your long distance road trips, having that confidence of knowing where you're going to stop along the way and knowing that you'll be able to recharge the vehicle. And most of the stops are really nice, like the one at Breezewood, where you actually have a convenience store where you can go in, get something to eat, go to the bathroom, take other personal needs under consideration during your stops, making those stops go by much quicker. The next lesson that I learned was you can trust the Tesla route planner. The Tesla Supercharger Network is very reliable, and it's also easy to find charging stations using the Tesla route planner. All you have to do is select a supercharger and along your destination, and this route planner will take you to that destination. But when I started on my trip, I was very unfamiliar with the area and the Tesla Supercharging Network. I added energy buffer to my charges, and additionally I purchased a CCS1 to J3400 charging adapter just in case I needed to charge at a non-Tesla charging station. After exclusively using the Tesla charging network, my confidence in the Tesla network grew, and I quit looking for non-Tesla supercharger stations as backup sites. As I said before, I often would charge more than the recommended amount, thinking that I wanted a little bit larger buffer for this road trip. I kept my speed between 5 and 8 miles an hour of the speed limit, and the first thing I noticed was I never arrived at any of my charging stops with less energy than was predicted. Even with occasionally going faster to keep up with the traffic, the Tesla route planner was spot on. The takeaway here is that the Tesla route planner is pretty darn accurate even through mountains in varying weather conditions. You don't notice the time that you charge while at home. Since I had planned the stop for food and a bathroom break, the extra time spent charging was barely noticeable. However, on a long road trip, when you are trying to get a lot of miles behind you, the charging time starts to add up. Making up to 8 charging stops during a day of driving, the added charging time becomes noticeable and significant. During my 3,500 mile road trip, I accumulated 15 and a half hours of charging time over 31 charging stops. Adding 6 minutes of overhead per stop adds 3.1 hours to the 15 and a half hours of charging time, bringing the accumulated time spent on stops to 18 hours and 36 minutes. With 57 and 7 minutes spent driving, the total trip time was 75 hours and 43 minutes. This works out to 24.6% of the trip was spent charging. In other words, you can expect to charge 1 hour for every 3 hours of driving. While the Tesla Supercharger network is robust and reliable, many of the stations are out in parking lots that require you to walk some distance to reach the restrooms, food, and other amenities. Superchargers are often at the back of parking lots at malls, hotels, shopping centers, often leaving you with a quarter-mile walk to the amenity. This makes the time charging go by faster, but also adds time to your overall trip. Tesla's cars' charging speed drops quickly as the battery gains more charge. In this charging rate graph, you can see while the charge initially started out at 250 kilowatts charging rate, the rate steadily falls from the peak to much lower rates, flattening out around 65%. The graph shows how much charging rate decreases relative to the battery state of charge. On my 3,500 mile road trip, I recorded charging data at several of my stops. Upon returning home from the trip, I analyzed and plotted the data in Excel and looked at and analyzed what this data could tell me about my trip and charging stops. The first thing I realized is that I need to average 90 kilowatts charging rate or higher to achieve a 3-to-1 ratio of driving time to charging time. So if I could average over 120 kilowatts charging rate, I could expand that ratio to 4-to-1. Certainly that would greatly speed up my road trips. However, it's often difficult to maintain that 120 kilowatt charging rate because if you look at these graphs, somewhere around 50 to 52%, that charging rate starts to fall below that 120 kilowatt charging rate. The lesson from all of this is to spend as little time charging the battery when the state of charge is over 55%. By doing so, you may be able to get a higher driving to charging time ratio, even when taking into account the additional 6 minutes of overhead that each stop adds, getting on and off of the interstate and accelerating and deaccelerating from highway miles. All right, it is charging at 257 kilowatts per hour. Pretty cool. With a Cybertruck charging at a V3 version 3 250 kilowatt DC fast charger, I can sometimes achieve 120 kilowatts charging rate up to a 55% state of charge. However, on a 150 kilowatt DC fast charger, I am barely able to reach a 120 kilowatt charging rate at the 55% state of charge. My conclusion from the data that I have taken is that you're likely to get less than 3 hours of drive time for every hour of charge time at a 150 kilowatt V2 charger. Preconditioning the battery is another factor that will impact your charging rate. Use the Tesla Route Planner to navigate to the Supercharger. The Route Planner automatically preconditions the battery temperature to optimize the charging speed for the battery. During this charging session, you can see that the Supercharger and the Cybertruck have downrated the charging rate to only 71 kilowatts, and this is at 42% of the battery. I think this is probably due to the fact that it's pretty cold outside, being 32 degrees outside, and the battery not being completely preconditioned, as it was only a 10-minute drive over to the Supercharger. But typically at about a 43% battery capacity, I should be getting 130 or 140 kilowatts of charge rate on this battery, which is pretty much what I saw on my long road trip. Intuitively, faster chargers lead to faster charging times. On my 3,500 mile road trip, I calculated the average charging time at a 250 kilowatt version 3 charger and that charging time for a 150 kilowatt version 2 charger. With the battery charge curve often limiting the amount of charge received, you might think that the faster chargers would not be that different. But take a look at the average charge time for V3 and V2 charge stations and note the difference in the average charge received between the two. On my trip, I averaged 25.1 minutes of charge time at V3 chargers and 32 minutes at V2 chargers. At the V3 chargers, I averaged 61 kilowatt hours of charge for a 2.53 kilowatt hour per minute gain and only 56 kilowatt hours of charge for a 1.94 kilowatt hour per minute of gain. Based on my numbers, the charge time from 55% to 85% did more to decrease the ratio of drive time to charge time than the time from 10 to 55%. Therefore, anytime you can shift more usable energy into the bottom half of the battery is going to give you a higher ratio of drive time to charger time. In one charging session, I spent 20 minutes acquiring 60 kilowatts of charge and 23 minutes acquiring 35 kilowatt hours of charge. Had I been able to split the two charging stops only using the bottom half of the battery, I would have increased my driving time by 52.5 miles for only 6 additional minutes of overhead. In this example, the two charging stops would have been faster than one. As it turns out, on a long road trip, the larger battery capacity is useful in time for the larger bottom half of the battery than actually having the bigger battery for a full charge. If you use the battery in the same way that we're accustomed to using a gas tank, always running off the top half of the tank, we would end up spending way more time charging than we would spend driving. Not a great ratio for a long road trip. When charging at home, you're indifferent to the time spent charging because you would not be driving the car during that time anyway. But on a long road trip where you're stopping and then having to get back on the road, that charging time becomes more of an issue. Okay folks, this is our 7th charging stop. We're in Terre Haute, Indiana. It's a major station. But the interesting thing about this station is these are version 3 dispensers. Notice the thinner cables. And then as you go down here, the first ones I stopped at were actually version 2. So wanted to move down to where they had the version 3 and the faster charger. Actually starting right here at this post, these last ones are version 2. Anyway, I'm gonna go grab something to eat and get back on the road. All right, friends, this is our 2nd charging stop for the day. We're in Wytheville, Virginia. We're right behind a Holiday Inn Express. I've got a little 6-station charger here. It's version 2, so it's only 150 kilowatts. But for a while, we had the entire rack to ourselves, so we've been getting full 150 kilowatts, but now we're down to about 119. We're actually good enough to go. So we'll go ahead and disconnect, and we are going to get on our way. So we'll press the button, wait for it to unlock. It's unlocked. We go back in, automatically close. We're on our way to our next stop in Roanoke, Virginia. Raphine, Virginia. Another lesson that I learned while pulling into the Superchargers is try to spread yourself out. You'll notice the 2 large cabinets over here, which means that this Supercharger has 2 times 250 kilowatts available for charging. Each of those large cabinets supplies a bank of the Superchargers. Notice here I'm at 2A and 2B. So one of the cabinets feeds these 2 Superchargers. by spreading out between the different banks, you're able to ensure that you'll get the maximum amount of charge from the charger that the battery can handle. However, if it's a very busy supercharger, you're going to be sharing that cabinet with those also charging at the supercharger on that same cabinet. Since arriving at the supercharger, all the stalls are now full and we actually have someone waiting to charge. So we're going to go ahead and stop charging and get back on our road trip. At a supercharger station in Meridian, Mississippi, a van pulled up and stopped behind the truck. I opened the door to find out what was going on, only to be greeted by a 10-year-old boy who asked if he could see the Cybertruck. His name was Preston, and he was the most polite young man I think I've ever met. He must have thanked me 10 times for letting him look inside the Cybertruck. We opened the front to let him and his sister sit in it for a picture. We let him open the tonneau and the tailgate to peer inside the bed. His aunt thanked us for letting him check out the truck, and as they were driving off, I heard him telling his aunt to hurry home so he can tell his mom about seeing the Cybertruck. The next lesson learned is that full self-driving takes a lot of the stress out of a long road trip and driving on the highway. Well, I tell you, I am very, very impressed with full self-driving, especially on a long trip like the one we're taking. Probably one of the first things that comes to mind about it is the fact that when you do stop and you pick up something to eat, and the other day I stopped in Culver's and picked up a burger, you're able to use both hands to eat, you know, so you can actually hold a ketchup cup and dip your French fries and eat your French fries without having to hold on to the steering wheel, or hold the burger with 2 hands, or peel the paper back with one while you're holding the burger. So there's some really, you know, from a driving and eating and moving down the road on a long trip, a real advantage to take that pressure off the driver and allow them to do a couple of other tasks.
Right onto Medical Building Road.
All right, it's making the turn into the parking lot, and let's see what it does once it gets in the parking lot. May just end up getting in here and then disengaging it and then seeing if we can use the auto park.
Now your destination is on the right.
So I'm going to go ahead and disengage. So we're in the parking lot, and then I'm just going to back in right here. FSD, I let it drive me into parking lots to see what happens. While pulling into a supercharger, I let FSD drive up to the charging stalls and stop. Not realizing that FSD attention monitoring software was still active, FSD started beeping and I lost my self-driving privileges. Lesson learned: disengage FSD when stopped. Alrighty folks, we've made it out of the snowstorm and on the other side, but unfortunately with the wipers in the Cybertruck and the poor perfusion of the wiper fluid, we have a windshield that is very difficult to see through. So we're going to find the first gas station we can find, and we're going to pull in and actually clean the windshield. But Tesla definitely needs to improve their windshield wiper fluid dispensing to make good use of traveling in inclement weather like we've done today, or to make it even possible to drive in inclement weather like we've driven in today. We stopped in Frederick, Maryland, because the windshield was so dirty and the Tesla wiper would not clean it. So I wanted to go ahead and stop and wipe the window down with the squeegee and some cleaning solution to get it clean so we can see our way back as we go into Baltimore. We didn't have to stop here, but we decided to go ahead and stop here and add a bit of charge, because we want to have some charge in the battery when we get home tonight. So we'll get on the road here in another 15-20 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and take it up to about 66%, and then we'll head on into Baltimore. The lesson learned is to buy a squeegee that extends and a bucket to put in your Cybertruck so you can clean that big windshield when it gets dirty. One of the things I miss about not having autopilot is the lane centering feature. The current cruise control does not maintain lane centering or steering, but it does a good job of following other vehicles and controlling your speed. But that means every time you drift close to one of the lines, you get that annoying lane warning. So I do miss full self-driving. And when you're on the interstate, they really should lessen the driver awareness challenges, because I mean, it's not in a cross traffic or those kinds of things where you have to watch what's going on. You're not coming on a lot of navigation. You're just cruising down the highway. They really need to do the driver awareness, relax the driver awareness in a context of when you're on the interstate versus when you're in city driving or navigating in construction. So there needs to be a smarter driver awareness system for FSD.
All right, so this is MAXQBBQ's baby sis, and so I've taken one leg driving the Cybertruck, and so here are my impressions of it. First, is this a cool vehicle? Yes, this is seriously cool, and for someone that loves technology as much as my brother does, this is a perfect fit. Now, the things that could use a lot of improvement for me is, number one, the ergonomics of this chair. So I can't adjust this seat, so I keep feeling like I've got something hitting me in the head. It's very uncomfortable. In order to do a left or a right turn signal, it's a button press. I've gotten used to that, so I'll press now. But you see, I'm turning my head to look back because I'm trying to verify where I'm going. And you can't rely on the rear view mirror because you just can't use it for anything. So to me, that's a big limiter. Doesn't make me feel very warm and comfy not being able to use that or see that. But my biggest thing is my field of vision is like here to here. If I want to know how fast I'm going, I have to go down here outside my field of vision. If I want to look at where I'm driving to, like I'm used to having my iPhone on a little stand here, I have to go past my usual field of vision way over here. Very uncomfortable, not my vibe, not my vibe. But overall, it's still very cool. Steering wheel's comfortable, and I'm having a great day riding around with MAXQBBQ.
Another one of my favorite accessories that I've purchased for the Cybertruck is the cargo net that I purchased for the cargo bed. Notice I have the truck loaded up for a road trip with all of my gear and stuff under the cargo net to keep it from flopping around in the truck as we're driving along. All I got to do is close up the vault, and it's safe and secure and won't go bouncing around in the back of the truck as we go down the highway. One of my favorite accessories for the road trip was this under the touchscreen shelf, and I use this a lot of times just to put my cell phone there, or sometimes I'll put napkins or ketchup or some kind of things like that to make it easy to drive. But anyway, it's a really great accessory and really helps make the trip go by a lot easier. Just wanted to show you this little video of one of my favorite accessories. This is one that I bought from EVBase, a great company. They're an affiliate of our channel here. But this little fold-up canvas basket holds a lot of stuff, and it goes right here on the floor. And it's actually a pretty perfect little device. I got a couple of water bottles, got place for my tissue, for my hand cream, my extra sodas. It's just a little canvas bag. It's very inexpensive, but it's a great deal of utility. And my wife loves baskets. And if you need to, you can take this thing and take everything out of it and fold it up and put it away, and stores away nice and flat. But since I've got it, it stays unfolded and full of stuff in the Cybertruck, and it adds a lot of utility to the front and the driver cockpit of the Cybertruck. So But I just got off a 3,500 mile road trip, and they were great because I had a couple of folks that wanted rides in the Cybertruck, and they served very well to help some of my elderly friends get into the Cybertruck. Even though it's engineered to lower down the ride height, it still was nice for my mother-in-law and some other friends to be able to walk up and then put their foot on the running board and then hold on to the truck as they get in. So it makes getting into the truck very easy for someone that has a little bit of limited mobility. Another road tripping accessory that's very low cost but very convenient are these TWraps, little 3D printed inserts that go into the door handles. It's really nice because you can drop your keys, or you can drop, like in my case, some eyeglass wipes into these little plastic trays, and they just add another little place of storage as you're going down the road. They're cut out, of course, so you can get to the emergency release on the door, but very low cost and a very nice addition to the Cybertruck accessories, so that gives you that one more secret storage space. These front seat cushions from BestEVMods are a real hit with the kids. As you probably saw in the video, kids love taking their pictures sitting in the front and front gating out of the Cybertruck. They just thought it was so cool. They just really did. And by the way, I store my grocery bags under the seats. And I also have bed liners, but those are pretty much a given for most people. I hope you enjoyed the video today. And if you like any of the accessories that were shown in the video, please support our channel by using the affiliate links listed in the description, or try using MAXQ as a discount code when making the purchase. The goal of today's video was to provide you with a few tips and tricks and things that you might want to know before making a long road trip in the Cybertruck. I hope our explanations and video will get you the confidence to make a very long road trip in your Cybertruck, or even any of the Tesla EVs. In many ways, the Cybertruck is still a technology prototype. As an early reservation holder, I always felt like I was a Kickstarter investor and that the truck was actually a prototype. Well, in many ways it is, and every software release, it gets better and better. So be sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.